March 2nd, 2010. Angela woke up not knowing if she had a dream during the night or if she had actually heard strange voices coming from Angela Angel. Angela, still 17 years old, took Angela Angel off the dresser where she had stood since she was born and pulled the string. Angela Angel said, "I know what you are thinking, Angela." But this time she did not tell Angela her wish was unworthy. "Angela Angel, I wish that you would take Mr. Yancey Tolland and me back to April 2008 and keep our memories of the events during these past 2 years fresh in our minds." And with that, Angela Angel said, "Angela, this is a worthy wish. I will grant you that wish, but you must understand what will happen. This is a very strange and unusual wish, since you are not asking me to turn a dead person into a live person. You are not asking me to change somebody's mind, or for great wealth, or for a long life. You are only asking to go back to a point in time where everything is the same as it was. Nothing in the world will change except that affected by you and Mr. Tolland, since no one else in the world will have a memory of these past 2 years as you have wished. Also, I must somewhat amend your wish. You and Mr. Tolland will remember the events of these past 2 years for only 1 month. On May 8th, 2008, you will no longer have any memory of what has transpired. That means you will not remember that Ellis died of diphtheria and that Edward drowned in that ice pond. This is extremely important to remember. Any changes that you make must occur during the month of April. After that, only things affected by these April changes will be altered in the months after. This is a wise and worthy wish, and I am glad you limited your wish to you and Mr. Tolland. You are wise to recognize that Mr. Tolland is the key to any future changes, since he has the ability to impact many lives, and not just your own family's life. Angela, remember that humans possess the gift of free will. This will give Mr. Tolland the opportunity to make different choices. Remember, nothing will change from what has already happened, except what you and Mr. Tolland change. Of course, when you go back in time, your appearance and bodies will revert back to younger bodies with the older memories. You will be 15 years old again. My wish will have been used, and I will no longer talk to you. My pull string will appear to be broken after years of faithful use. And with that, Mr. Tolland and Angela were thrown back to April 2008, the second time around. April 2008. During this time, there was a meeting in a rented hall for all the employees of Tolland's Toy Company. Mr. Daly was especially interested since he barely had any money left after saving all he could for a college education for his children. He was hoping for some relief. Maybe a union could force Mr. Tolland to bring employer-supported health care that the employees never had. Maybe Tolland's Toy Company could be persuaded to provide child care for its employees so parents could be free to find employment to help the family's finances. Mr. Daly was interested to hear that Tolland's was making tremendous profits. Some of these profits went back into the company for research and development, upgrading the facility, buying more modern equipment, but this was all accounted for in the profit numbers. Most of the money went back to Mr. Tolland and his stockholders. No one wanted to give money back to the worker. That was just not practical. Mr. Daly was hoping the company would support a retirement program for its workers. If Tolland's would contribute just an extra 1 or 2% for this purpose, Mr. Daly could free up some of his income for other things the family really needed, but continued to do without. When Mr. Tolland heard about the union meeting, he became intrigued. I think it's about time we provided our faithful and loyal workers some health insurance, Mr. Tolland announced at his stockholders' meeting. Everyone was shocked, since Mr. Tolland had always been so vehemently opposed to providing health insurance. This will eat into profits, many people of the executive board said. It's the right thing to do, said Mr. Tolland. Could you afford health insurance on your own? Since Mr. Tolland owned a majority of the company's stock, the new practice began almost immediately. Also, said Mr. Tolland, we will be giving all workers a 7% raise in the form of a tax-sheltered annuity. An amount equal to 7% of everyone's salary will be placed into an account for the employees. This money may be withdrawn upon retirement or a separation. And with that, most of the workers were able to keep more of their regular salary for other things. Finally, continued Mr. Tolland, we will convert one of our old manufacturing spaces into a brand new, beautiful child care center. Any Tolland employee may use this center free of charge. Every working family with children immediately reaped the benefit of saving a substantial amount of money that previously went toward childcare. The day after Mr. Tolland announced this to his stockholders, he instructed all his employees to assemble in Tolland's Grand Hall. All the employees cheered Mr. Tolland, and he felt a warm feeling of happiness he had never experienced. He also announced that the following day he was providing a free clinic for all employees and their children for the purpose of a health screening and vaccinations. After the meeting, he made a special point of approaching Mr. Daly. Thomas, I happen to know from my position on the school board that your two children have never completed their childhood vaccinations. I expect to see them both at the clinic tomorrow. Mr. Daly shook his boss's hand and said, Of course, sir. The next day, Mr. Tolland observed the activity resulting from his free clinic. He was pleased to see Ellis Daly receive his shots. He looked at Angela and with a wry little knowing smile, nodded satisfaction that was felt by both. The clinicians scheduled all follow-up shots and treatment resulting from the free clinic with the employees' respective doctors. All future shots and treatment were now covered by health care. Another unexpected benefit resulted from Mr. Tolland's new attitude. His workers became more productive than he ever found by using threats and intimidation. The word got around that Tolland's toy factory was a caring place to work. The image of the company improved, sales went up, production went up, and profits were never higher. Mr. Tolland took this opportunity to meet with Angela. He wanted to know if she felt these changes would make a difference in the lives of her family and the other workers. She assured him that it would. Do you think what happened here will save Ellis? Asked Mr. Tolland. I know it will, said Angela. Also, I know that my father will save Edward's life. His bitterness that I have known is completely gone. We must believe this because, as I told you, on May 8th, neither of us will remember what happened. Mr. Tolland said, I still do not understand how this happened. But I do know that I suffered unbearable grief by losing Edward. I also know that Edward is here now, and that unless we change the events that caused his drowning, our families will suffer again. Since we only have a few more days before we both forget, I only hope it is enough. I now know there is a force in the world more powerful than anything I ever imagined. I only hope this power will keep possession of me after May 8th. Angela said, My faith tells me it will, Mr. Tolland. November 2009 through January 2010. The second time around. Ellis, now nearly 10 years old, was a typical fifth grader. Ellis had his share of childhood diseases, but he was always able to ward off any serious illness. Since Tolland's toy company controlled the valley and everything there, including the school system, it recently required all students to have their immunizations up to date. The school nurse was charged with the responsibility of checking every child's medical record. If the cost of an immunization was an issue, Whether the child's parents worked at Tolland's toy company or not, free immunizations were provided by Tolland's. Mr. Daly felt compelled to see Mr. Tolland about his change in policy. Invited into Mr. Tolland's office, Mr. Daly proceeded to thank Mr. Tolland. By this time, both Angela and Mr. Tolland had lost all recollection of events that already happened. Mr. Tolland received Mr. Daly, not remembering or knowing that in several weeks hence, Mr. Daly will be present when Edward falls through the ice while skating. Mr. Tolland, I wanted to thank you for changing your policy about providing your workers with health insurance and other benefits. It certainly has made a difference in our lives. I know I should have thanked you months ago, but honestly, I never thought you would keep your policy changes. Thomas, if we are going to be honest with each other, I cannot even remember what prompted me to change myself. You know that I have always felt that a man should provide for his own family. I never believed that I should be paying for your child's insurance premium, or for your retirement, or for your child care. What possessed me to change has confounded me for months. But you know what? It turned out to be a good move. We are still making plenty of money for everyone here in our Tolland family. If our workers are happy, they make a better product and take pride in their work. And then I got to thinking, why should I be making all this money and not sharing it with the people who made me what I am? Thomas, you know I could never replace a man like you with another warm body. It's better to share the wealth and have a loyal workforce. And guess what? I discovered that it's just the right darn thing to do. When we stop caring for our neighbor and only think of ourselves, that's when we become lost in the world. If it feels right, then it probably is right. Before, I always did things that felt wrong. I thought my actions before would make me richer. Now, I finally learned how to become a rich man just as you are, Thomas. Mr. Daly shook Mr. Tolland's hand and left. Mr. Tolland could not help feeling that he and Thomas had some kind of connection. He figured that it must be because Thomas Daly worked there for many years and left it at that. Saturday, February 6, 2010. The second time around. During this day, Mr. Daly was walking the streets, reliving the events of the past 2 years. Mr. Daly often took a walk on Saturdays for the exercise and to be alone with his thoughts. Mr. Tolland was in his office conducting business as usual. Mr. Tolland often worked on Saturday since the stores were always open. Mrs. Daly was working in the hospital. Edward Tolland, now 10 years old, was skating on the frozen pond near the bottom of the hill leading up to the family mansion. Thomas Daly, while walking in the vicinity of that pond, saw Edward skating. The sight of Yancey Tolland's son skating playfully filled his heart with joy. Then suddenly he saw the ice crack and Edward fall in. The pond was only about 5 feet deep, but with the frigid water temperature and heavy metal skates, Edward was not able to pull himself up wrapped in his bulky winter waistcoat. Thomas ran to save Edward. Thomas knew that the pond was not very deep. When Thomas jumped into the pond, the water came to his neckline. Thomas grabbed Edward and lifted him up so he could breathe. Edward reached to find a solid piece of ice and pulled himself to solid ground. Thomas followed, shivering from the frigid ice water. When Mrs. Tolland could no longer see Edward from her picture window view, she rushed down to check on Edward. When she got to the pond, she found Edward and Mr. Daly soaking wet and freezing cold. She screamed, "Edward! Mr. Daly! What are you doing?" "Mother, I fell into the icy pond and Mr. Daly pulled me out." "Mr. Daly," Mrs. Tolland said, "I don't know why God put you at this spot and at this exact moment, but I thank God he did. Now both of you come on up and get those wet clothes off and warm up before you catch your death." Upon hearing what happened, Yancey Tolland was unable to express his gratitude to Mr. Daly. From that moment on, Mr. Daly found his life had changed. He was promoted and put in charge of trainees at the factory, no longer working 8-hour shifts on the line. His vacation time increased, his pay increased, and his overall self-respect heightened. Mr. Daly could not believe that fortune had smiled down upon him to such a magnificent degree. This was a good day for the Daly family. Not only had Thomas Daly's life changed, but Angela received in the mail early acceptance to Penn State University on a full scholarship. Although Angela had no memory of the role Angela Angel played in her family's good fortune, she could not help thinking that some divine intervention was involved. Postlude, March 1st, 2010. The second time around. With her work done, Angela Angel was prepared to leave Angela. Angela Angel had remained Angela's guardian angel for nearly 17 years, but now it was time to leave for her next little girl. As Angela lay in bed with her mind reeling from the events of the past several weeks, she saw the same glowing light come over Angela Angel that she had seen on this same exact day the first time around. Only Angela did not remember that she already lived this day once and was now experiencing déjà vu. From this point on, Angela's life will be built on new experiences and new happenings that she has never lived. The wisdom of Angela Angel forced Angela to use her one wish for the best possible outcome. Only Angela will not remember anything about a wish. All Angela will remember is her favorite doll that used to talk to her, but now sits speechless on her doll shelf. The light from Angela Angel winged its way back to Tolland's Toy Company and ascended into the soft padding of Arista's embodiment. Arista was a new generation of doll. She could still talk, but only now her voice was a digital recording, activated by squeezing her wrist. One day soon, Mr. Tolland will present Arista Angel to the newborn daughter of Carlo and Josephine Bellissimo. I suspect they may name their baby girl Arista.
We hope that you have enjoyed this presentation of Angela Angel, narrated by Christina Iovino. We invite you to return, at a future date, to find out how Arista Angel helps Arista overcome her very troubling situation. Thank you for your wishes that definitely helped Angela through her most difficult ordeal.